Hello, this is bench 3, and our experiment was on the effect of olfactory stimuli on the behavior of Colossobruchus maculatus. This is our organism that we used. It is also known as the bean beetle. So the ecological role of C. maculatus is a pest, and its habitat is usually in cowpeas or other beans. Adult bean beetles do not require anything to eat or drink, and they just mate in their lifespan that is approximately 2 weeks. Like other insects, C. maculatus have a preference for where they lay their eggs, and experimentally it's been found that they prefer to lay their eggs on cowpeas due to the semiochemicals they emit. So our question was, to what extent does olfactory perception influence the behavior of the bean beetle? And then our objective was to determine whether C. maculatus will be attracted to beans or if they will be distracted by other olfactory stimuli. The hypothesis was, if C. maculatus is able to distinguish between sensory perceptions, then they will be attracted to their native habitat, which was the bean, because it increases the likelihood of their offspring reaching maturation. And our prediction, when presented with the opportunity to demonstrate a preference for beans or the experimental group, which was potato or orange, C. maculatus will disregard other olfactory sensations and direct its attention to the beans.
Okay, so now we have the method or the procedure of our experiment. So we set up 3 large petri dishes with the following. We had 1 control group, which consisted of black-eyed beans and nothing, and 2 manipulated groups, one which had orange and black-eyed beans, and potato and black-eyed beans. So then we had 3 beetles, which were labeled as group 1, 2, or 3, and they were placed onto each plate. Each of the 3 groups of beetles were cycled through all of the variables so that we could record their behavior and the time it took for them to reach each side without bias. So then these beetles were observed for 10 minutes after they were trapped under a petri dish and not disturbed. After those 10 minutes, we released them and we gave them another 10 minutes to see which side they chose. We repeated this experiment through steps 1 to 3 times. And in that time span, we made sure to record their behavior as well as the time it took for them to choose a side. So now for our materials. So we used about 12 bean beetles. We had cut up oranges, potato, and black-eyed beans. We also had petri dishes and lids, which were large and small. We had containers both for new and used bean beetles. We had tweezers, plastic spoons, and timers, as well as ice so that we can slow down our bean beetles.
To complete our experiment, we made sure that we exposed all 12 of the beetles to each of the 3 trial conditions. So we had 36 trials in total. Our control condition was made to test the frequency of attraction to beans without the interference of another scent. Then we also had the group with orange and potato. When we first released the beetles, they would often be very still or move very, very little, even with adequate time to acclimatize. When they would move, they would generally move in short bursts, stopping suddenly. But there was a very high variety in the activity of the beetles. Some moved lots and quickly, some showed very little response. And when approaching a substance, their antennae would be moving quite a bit. So you could tell that they were kind of sensing what was there. A couple of times beetles would get stuck on their back and struggle to turn around. And then finally, some would move very quickly to a substance in like under a minute, but most of them took several minutes to move on to a substance. Here in this figure, we are representing the number of times each substance area was selected by the bean beetles in all of the trials. And you can see that in the control condition, the beetles were attracted to beans 42% of the time. So the rest of the time they were attracted to nothing because there's nothing else there. But out of the 24 trials that exposed the beetles to beans alongside another scent, the beetles chose a substance 11 times. So 54% of the time, beetles did not move on to a substance at all, even though there were 2 available. Whatever the 11 times that a substance was chosen, they chose beans 45% of the time. When a side was selected in the beans and orange trial, beans were chosen 75% of the time, but in the beans and potato trial, they chose a substance 7 times, but beans were only chosen twice out of those times. So it was 29% in total, they would choose the beans. In this table, we show the summary statistics of the response time in seconds of how quickly it would take the beetles to move on to a substance. And you can see that when they were exposed to 2 stimuli, the beetles had a response time that was almost 100 seconds shorter on average compared to beetles that were only exposed to beans. Like you can see, we have beetles in the control trial that were attracted to beans, took an average of 356.2 seconds to move on to them. But of the beetles exposed to 2 scents that selected a side, they had an average of 259.5 seconds of a response time.
Yeah, so our observations in this experiment mostly match our hypothesis, as when the C. maculatus did choose a stimuli, it usually chose the bean. This was especially true for the orange versus bean group, as only one C. maculatus out of the 12 chose the orange when presented with both the orange and the bean. Furthermore, the C. maculatus that chose the cowpea took half as long to choose it compared to the C. maculatus that chose the orange. The C. maculatus choosing the potato can be explained by a study done in China in 2019. They found that when presented with different white and brown colored beans, female C. maculatus would overwhelmingly choose to lay eggs on the brown beans. This explained our result by the fact that in natural environment of the C. maculatus, brown and white seeds have different physical and chemical characteristics that affect how well the C. maculatus larvae can penetrate into the seed and obtain nutrients to survive. In our experiment, the brown potatoes may have been mistaken by some of the female C. maculatus to be brown beans that would increase the likelihood of their offspring's survival. Furthermore, this would mean that in our experiment, there was a confounding variable, as a third variable of visual stimuli had an effect on our experiments. A major source of error in this experiment was the way the C. maculatus were handled. They were transported with a spoon and shaken off into the plate. This may have startled them and resulted in the low amounts of activity that we saw and no selections. Furthermore, the C. maculatus were put on ice for the entire experiment to minimize their escaping the container when being transported. In the end, this may have resulted in very dazed and low energy beetles. Furthermore, the lighting conditions in the experiment were not very bright, and so the C. maculatus may have not been active because their circadian rhythm made them believe that it was nighttime. To improve the validity of this experimental design, a higher sample size could have been used to decrease variance so that predictions made about the populations based on sample data would have been more accurate. Furthermore, the lights could have been turned on to create brighter conditions, and the C. maculatus could have been transported using a more gentle method. Lastly, longer intervals of observation could have allowed for more accurate results, as the C. maculatus may have been more active if left alone for long periods of time. Further research done in the experiment could be to see if behaviors differ when these beetles are put in large groups, like those found in nature. Moreover, variables like texture or color of stimuli could have also been tested to see if they would affect the preference of the C. maculatus. This is crucial, as in agricultural industries, the C. maculatus results in significant crop loss every year, and ways to attract these populations away from crucial crops to other stimuli could significantly increase the crop yield and lead to high financial success. And these are our references.